Hello everyone, welcome to Brown Struggle in Canada. If you don't know me, I'm B and I make travel and lifestyle videos. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And today's video is on CELPIP versus IELTS. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's used as an English proficiency test for study, work and immigration all around the world. CELPIP stands for Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program, and it's specifically designed for Canadian English assessment. So if you are an international student who is looking to apply for international study visa, this one won't work for you. So let me quickly show you the official CELPIP's website. Here you can see you can choose your location and you can choose a test date to see if it's available near you. And here is a quick introduction about CELPIP. And this is the most important part where you can see it's mainly for the permanent residency application. And here you can see CELPIP General LS, that's a different one, that's for citizenship applications. And if you look at the drop down menu, you see there are free resources for you to prepare for the test program too. And here is IELTS official website. As you can see, it's a lot broader as compared to CELPIP, and if you scroll down, you can see there are multiple countries that accept IELTS. And both of these are English proficiency tests but are slightly different. So the first thing we are going to talk about are the modules. Both the tests have 4 modules: listening, speaking, writing and reading. The difference is that CELPIP is entirely computer-based, and even for speaking, you are required to record your answers directly into the test computer. Whereas in IELTS, the reading, listening and writing modules can be either computer-based or paper-based, but the speaking is conducted separately in person. Let's talk about the differences in the individual modules now.
I just came back from work, so I thought I'll just join this video and share my experience with the CELPIP exam as well. Now, I know we were talking about the modules for CELPIP and IELTS, and I know that the CELPIP exam listening is probably the trickiest module in the CELPIP exam. This is because if you're not good at note-taking, all of the information in the CELPIP exam for listening is actually presented before any of the questions come on the screen. So you're forced to take down notes and remember the critical information so you can fill it out later. Although you're helped a little bit by the fact that you can choose the answers from a drop-down menu, so that's good. But opposite to that, in IELTS, you actually have your questions right in front of you. And the information is also presented in small paragraphs or smaller paragraphs compared to the CELPIP exam. So you're able to just write down your answer right away inside the questions at that time. So if you're choosing CELPIP for your English test, make sure you practice your note-taking, because otherwise listening would be very difficult.
And another thing that I would like to add to the listening module is in IELTS, you have to write down your own answers, and there is a possibility that someone might make a spelling or a grammatical error. Whereas in CELPIP, you can choose your answer from the drop-down menu. It's like a multiple choice question, and you won't have to worry about any grammatical or any spelling mistakes. So now let's talk about the reading module. Both in CELPIP and IELTS, the reading module is almost an hour long. But in CELPIP, the test is broken down into smaller sections and you are given a timer for each section.
So in the reading module, the CELPIP test is actually divided into paragraphs, smaller paragraphs that you have to answer in a line. So you have to start from the first paragraph, you have to answer the questions, and if you do not do so in the given time, you are forced to go to the next paragraph and start with those questions. Whereas in IELTS, you have all of the different paragraphs and different sections that you can divide your time according to yourself and answer at your own pace for different paragraphs. Now, one advantage of having the CELPIP format is that it becomes less confusing when you're trying to handle one paragraph at a time and you know the answer has to be in that paragraph. Whereas in IELTS, you're handling multiple paragraphs and you have to find the information, and that actually, when it looks like an advantage, becomes a disadvantage because you have to go through so many paragraphs find the right answers, and select if they are in the right paragraph that you're looking them in, and then write them down for the different questions.
So the next module that we are going to talk about is the writing module. In IELTS, you are given 2 tasks for the writing module. One is the essay writing and the other one is writing a formal letter. Whereas in CELPIP, you are given 2 tasks, but they are completely different from IELTS. You're required to write an email and the other task is to respond to a survey question.
Now, the advantages of the CELPIP exam in the writing module is that because it's completely computer-based, you are actually given the chance to spell check right there on the screen. So you won't be making too many grammatical or spelling mistakes. And at the same time, you also see a word count for the essays that you're writing right there on the screen, which saves you the time to have to keep checking that you're within that word limit that they give you. Also, in my own personal experience, I would say that I have found that the CELPIP test marks or grading is much more lenient for the writing exam. In my IELTS writing, I think I was graded very harshly, but well, that was my personal experience. It might be different for yours, but I'm just sharing my personal experience here.
So the 4th module that we are going to talk about is the speaking module. In IELTS, you are required to do an in-person speaking test, whereas in CELPIP, it's all computer-based and you can record your answers directly to the test computer. In CELPIP, the test is broken down into the smaller section and you have a timer for each section to do your recording, whereas in IELTS, it's only 3 sections and you have to answer directly to an examiner.
So what this means is that when you're doing an IELTS test and you are nervous in front of people, it might become a little bit more difficult as compared to CELPIP. So I see it as a big advantage where in CELPIP you're required to actually talk to a computer. It becomes really easy, and at the same time your answers are judged by an examiner or an exam checker later anyways. So I would suggest that for anybody who feels a little bit uncomfortable giving the speaking tests, CELPIP would be the best way to go.
Now that we have spoken about all 4 modules, let's move to the other factors that you may want to consider before choosing your test. And the next factor we are going to talk about is the time. So the CELPIP exam can be done in one sitting and is approximately 3 hours long, whereas
the speaking test in an IELTS exam is conducted separately, so you might have to come back another day to give the speaking module. Now, this means that it's additional cost for giving the exam and additional time.
And the other factor that you might want to consider is the cost of the exam. So the IELTS test costs around approximately $300, whereas the CELPIP test is slightly cheaper and it only costs around $270.
Now, a practical note here is that although the CELPIP seems just a little bit cheaper than the IELTS exam, you have to actually take into consideration that for the IELTS test, since the speaking module is actually on a different day, possibly, you might have to come back, take a day off of work, and even do the commuting costs. So at the end, it ends up being much more expensive than the CELPIP exam.
And the next factor that you may want to consider is the acceptability. IELTS is accepted all around the world. So if you are considering a few countries and you are deciding whether you want to immigrate to, let's say, Australia or any other country, IELTS would be accepted everywhere. Whereas CELPIP is only for Canada. So if you're sure that you want to immigrate to Canada, then you can definitely take CELPIP.
Now, even though the scoring is a little bit different for both exams, they are pretty much the same skill levels for different grades. IELTS used a band system where you get out of 9 bands for each module, whereas in CELPIP, it's actually rated with a CLB rating. And anything above 9 to 12 is the highest grade in CELPIP, whereas in IELTS you'll get the same scores in Canadian immigration from 8 to 9 bands.
So that brings us to our recommendation of which test you should choose for your Canadian immigration. In our personal opinion, we recommend choosing CELPIP for a number of reasons.
So in my opinion, the number one reason to select CELPIP over IELTS is the time factor. Now, if you know anything about the Canadian life, you would know that you do not really have the time to book another day for your speaking test just to go there and finish that module. In that sense, CELPIP is not just much more cheaper, it's also much more time effective because you don't have to coordinate that schedule. Also, if you're living outside and you're applying for your visa, you know that you have to do so much of back and forth with different agents, and you might not be able to find the time to spend 2 days trying to do the different modules, and it might still help to book CELPIP for that.
My biggest reason to choose CELPIP over IELTS is the spell check. I'm so used to autocorrect that it was a savings race for me having that spell check on the computer. And also the fact that you don't have to give your speaking test in person was a lifesaver for me because it makes me extremely nervous.
For me, a big relief was that the writing section was actually not marked very harshly. Now, this is something that might vary for you, but I was really lucky regarding that.
So both of the tests were pretty good for Anu because he scored really good in both of them.
I do remember scoring 8 overall bands in IELTS, but if you consider individual bands, and if I inputted those individual bands for the serious calculator for express entry, it wasn't really the same for me for IELTS and CELPIP. I ended up getting better marks in CELPIP because of the fact that from 9 to 12 CLB is actually considered the highest marks in IELTS, in English proficiency in express entry. So CELPIP ended up being better for me in that regard. Also, a final fact that if you are eager to get your test results, you will get them faster with CELPIP. They usually arrive within a week, if not less. We actually received it in 3 days, which is amazing compared to IELTS, which you can wait quite a lot of time for.
And with that, we sum up today's video. Thank you so much for watching.
And if you liked the video and found it helpful, don't forget to share it with your friends, like the video down below, and subscribe to the channel to help us out. And we'll see you in the upcoming videos.